Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining me. Just before we get started and we start having a look at the exercises, just a couple of housekeeping tasks to go through. First of all, if someone could just let me know that they can hear me, that would be fantastic. I've done a webinar before where I've been talking for the best part of 20 minutes and no one was able to hear me because I didn't turn the microphone on. So if someone could just say, hello, I can hear you, then at least I know that you're hearing the things that I'm going to say. And second of all, I'll be looking backwards, left and right at two computer screens. So if I'm not looking directly at the camera, I'm looking at something else going on the other screen. So I'm not ignoring you, just keeping an eye on the stream, keeping an eye on chat, and making sure that everything is working as it should be working. Now, a few thank yous before we get going. As always, thank you to Flojo for having such a fantastic site, wonderful resources. If you haven't checked out Flojo, then please go ahead and do so. It's a fantastic website full of resources, whether you're doing FCE, CAE, or there's a number of other English exams, and there's lots of materials in there on the website in general to help you prepare for your English exam. So if you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. And to a number of Facebook pages that very kindly let me post on there today to tell you about the webinar. So, and Matura 2019, polski, matematyka, angielski, inne przedmioty, Matura 2019 z angielskiego, podstawowa i rozszerzenie bez spinki, and this one I'm gonna have difficulty with this one. Matura angielski 2019, porady, wskazówki, I hope I got that right, ciekawostki. So thank you very much to all of those Facebook pages and others that have allowed me to tell you about my webinar today. Okay, so let me just make sure that I've got everything up and running and everything is working as it should be working. Okay, everything looks good at the moment. So the first exercise I asked you to have a look at was this FCE reading task. Few exam tips as always. Of course, the idea is to read through the reading as quickly as possible, scan through it, skim through it as quickly as you can in order to get a good idea of context, find out what's going on, and of course as you're skimming, you're reading through the reading task, you're looking out for what might be key vocabulary. So any kind of unusual words or words that as you're reading, some words naturally just stand out. So keep an eye on those words. And as you finish reading the article, then have a look at the missing sentences. And if you remember some of those pieces of vocabulary, those phrases, those expressions, those ideas which are presented in the text, then automatically some of those answers should start to make sense, or at least you should be able to find the right position for those answers. But of course, the main reason why the answer is down to mainly vocabulary links. So there will be a clear vocabulary link between the text and the answer, and the text before the gap and after the gap. Possibly there'd be two links, possibly there might be one link, but there'll definitely be a vocabulary link between the answer and the text around that gap. And in some cases we're looking for a contextual answer. So where there is no clear vocabulary answer, you're looking for a contextual link of some kind. Okay, so let's have a look at this reading exercise and see why the answers are the answers. Okay. So if I quickly just read through the paragraph, then I'll highlight any vocabulary that might be interesting. So career success in the arts. John Prince, famous dancer and choreographer, gives advice on how to succeed in a career in the arts. I asked John how he got started and what requirements there are. Well, to be a professional dancer, it's useful to have had acting lessons or some background in drama. To have background in something is a wonderful expression. It means that you have experience of doing something, and you might have some background, a lot of background, not much background, but it's a wonderful expression to remember. If you want to succeed in musical theatre, you have to have a good singing voice as well. When you approach an agent, you should take a portfolio with your CV, your statistics sheet, and some good photos and reviews of your past performances. You will need dance clothes, ballet shoes, tap shoes, and even roller skates, depending on what kind of show you're going to go for. And that list of things at the end of the paragraph really gives away the answer, because if I drag this across, you'll be able to see. Make that a little bit larger for you. The answer, of course, is G for question number 1, and because G says being fully equipped with all this stuff beforehand. All this stuff is a clear vocabulary link to all of the things that were just mentioned. So the clothes, the ballet shoes, the tap shoes, the roller skates, etc., all of this stuff. So that's our vocabulary link. And also, in the answer, there's talk of auditions, and this is something which fits the context, because you go to an agent, with your portfolio and CV, so you're trying to find work in the arts somehow. So when you try to find work in the arts, then you go for auditions. So this is another context and vocabulary link. For question number 2, I'll carry on reading. Of course, you need to be extremely fit if you want to be a professional dancer. I dance or move for about there's a typo there. I dance or move about for about, no, there's no typo, no typo. I dance or move about for about 6 hours a day. There are great health benefits to being a dancer. I can eat a lot of pasta without gaining weight because dancing increases your metabolism so much. And then after the gap, it talks about a very busy schedule. So if we go to sentence number 2, we'll hit the show answers. You can't see, it's behind my head, but the answer is E. So if I drag across E, we'll see why the answer is E. And the answer is, when it comes to coping with stress, I find that exercise helps me to cope with my problems, so I stay in good shape mentally as well. So clear vocabulary links. We've got exercise in the answer, we've got in good shape, which means to be feeling fit, and of course that links back to the text before the gap where it says you need to be extremely fit. It talks about great health benefits to being a dancer. So all of this refers to keeping healthy and being fit and being in good shape. So that all links together. Now, in the answer, it talks about coping with stress, and we begin to see this after the gap because it talks about his very busy schedule and the amount of things that he's doing. So here we can see the answer links to vocabulary before and indeed after the gap. John has a very busy schedule in the next few months. He took time out to speak to me today from the making of a pop video to promote NRG's latest record. How would you say that? I choreographed, I thought. I choreographed, sorry, got there in the end. I choreographed the dance routine for the boys and I only had 2 days in which to learn it. I'm going to be working on a video for another well-known band, but that's top secret. Next month I'll be touring Spain in the production of a musical that was written by a friend of mine, Michaela Evans. Of course, if you're an artist, whichever art form you're in, you go on tours. So this is important vocabulary for this particular activity. So touring Spain, touring the world, touring the south of England even, or something along those lines. So to tour is a very important verb within this context. What's the answer for question number 3? Well, if we scroll down, we'll see that the answer is D, and if I pull across the answer, we'll find out why. After that, it's back to England to start a new term of dance classes. This is, we're talking about order of events here. So in the paragraph before the gap, he talks about everything that he's done, or he will be doing, and what happens first and what happens next, and so on. And then beginning of D starts after that. So this continues the logical flow of ideas, the logical contextual flow of the article and what happens next. And then he tells us what he's going to do. So after that, it's back to England to start a new term of dance classes. I can't see any other links to any other vocabulary here, but if you think I'm missing anything, or if you've got any questions, then please get in contact either on the live chat or afterwards in the comments section, and let me know if you've got any questions, if you think I've missed something. If you disagree with me, then please let me know. I'm happy to have that conversation. The text continues. As for the future, I've come to realise that I would never be content to be a chorus dancer. I'm too much of an individual for that. I like all artists. I love to become a household name. Nice expression. A household name, a celebrity, someone who's very, very well known. By writing and choreographing, having difficulty with that word today, my own musicals. John was born in Jamaica to a Jamaican father and a Scottish mother, but the family emigrated to England 20 years ago. Good antonyms to know: to immigrate, to emigrate. I have a little sister I adore, I love, who is also trained to be a dancer. Then the question is, how does it feel to have someone else following in your footsteps? Now, questions are a great way to find out what the answer is, because the beginning of the answer has got to answer the question which was just asked, and that's exactly what it does in this case, because the answer is A, because the answer is it's fine. So how does it feel to have someone else following in your footsteps? It's fine, but I try not to give out too much advice as it gets irritating. So of course, giving out too much advice is a clear link to the little sister, who's also training to be a dancer. And also after the gap, there's the context suggests that he himself still has a lot to learn, because the text continues. He has much more to learn. Has he much more to learn? I wondered. I've spent an incredible amount of my life training to get where I am. I went to college for 2 years in England. I trained for 6 months in Paris and about 8 months in America. But you never really stop training or learning your art. So what's the answer for question number 5? Well, the answer is, or for sentence number 5, the answer is F. And there's a key vocabulary link here. Like any profession where you're always travelling. Let's pick on always travelling first. And certainly we can see this in the text before. He's went to England, went to Paris, in America. Earlier on in the text we can see that he's in Spain and various other places. So very, very clearly we get the idea that he's travelling, and certainly that fits the context here. And also there's a link to learning, because it says to acquire something new almost every day. To acquire something new means indeed to learn something new. So the text continues. So would you say it's been plain sailing? I feel I've been lucky to a degree. Many people hit problems breaking into the arts. Hit problems. If you're studying for the FCE, CAE, or any other English exam, you have to have a wide vocabulary of being able to talk about advantages and disadvantages and language which is related to those issues. And of course, hit problems is a perfect example of dealing with negative issues or disadvantages. Hit problems, jump over hurdles, you have to cross barriers. All of this language, important language to know, particularly for your oral exams, where you've got that task where you've got to discuss photographs with someone else. Then really that vocabulary is something that you can show off, and also in your writing as well. It can be a vicious circle. Nice collocation, vicious circle, talking about something which is very, very difficult, very problematic, which you can't get out of. Excuse me. You can't become a member of Equity, which is the Actors and Dancers Union, without good contacts, and you can't get good contacts without being a member of Equity. My advice to people who want to get into the arts would be to go out into the world and try everything else first. Sorry, moving the wrong part of the screen. And the answer for number 6 is B. Why? Because after telling you, giving you advice to go out and try everything else first, he then gives us a contrast and says, and if nothing you like comes out of it, or in other words, if nothing you like as a result of what you've just done, then come back and be an actor or a dancer. So he sets up, gives you some good advice, but then gives you a contrast and tells you what to do if your plans don't work out. So that fits the context quite nicely. And those are the reasons why the answers are the answers. So I hope you managed to get 6 out of 6. I hope as you were going through that exercise before the video that you were thinking about vocabulary links, you were thinking about contextual links, because that's where your answers are always going to be. And as another great exam tip, one thing that I would encourage you to do in terms of learning vocabulary is sit down with synonyms and antonyms. So synonyms are words which mean similar things or the same things or similar things in context even. And antonyms, things which mean opposite things. Because if you have a good knowledge of synonyms and antonyms, then for a reading exercise like this, it's a really fantastic skill to have, and it allows you to start your thinking process about what the answer might be a lot faster and a lot easier than without that knowledge of antonyms and synonyms. Okay, now that we've had a look at the reading exercise, let's go ahead and look at the word formation exercise. So what we've got here, wonderful part 3 use of English question, word formation exercise. Fantastic test of your knowledge of vocabulary, your knowledge of language structure, your knowledge of language patterns, and your knowledge of word development. So how you create words from other words. So your knowledge of stem verbs, and then how you can create nouns, adverbs, and adjectives from those. And as we'll see in this case, your knowledge of prefixes as well. So negative prefixes, which negative prefixes are you correct with your negative prefixes? So this is a really rounded test, for all of your skills. But the good thing about this is that it gives you a good chance of having a good guess. So even if you don't know, even though you know that you're going to need a noun, an adjective or an adverb, which is the first step to make sure that you know what kind of word is going to go in that gap, even if you don't know the vocabulary but you have a good understanding of how to build words, then you've got a fair chance at getting it correct with an educated guess. So this is another reason why it's slightly old-fashioned, slightly boring, but nevertheless sitting down with a good dictionary or with a good reference book and building words, taking stem words, making nouns, making adjectives, making adverbs, and learning how the words come together. So let's have a look, let's have a look at this exercise together and see what kind of words we need and what indeed the answers are. So, in food production, in the not too distant past, in the not too distant past, farm animals were able to live natural lives in what we would now term free-range conditions. Why natural? Why the adjective? Well, we can see that the gap is before a noun. And generally with this word formation exercise, if we can identify the type of word after the gap, it gives us a good clue of what might be before the gap. So lives, lives, made a mistake there. Lives is a plural noun. What type of word modifies nouns? Adjectives. So a noun might be person, for example. So we need to modify that noun, so we could, and we would do so by using an adjective. So happy person, unhappy person, sad person, glad person, fat person, big person. So we need adjectives to modify nouns, and that's why we need the adjective here. So the noun is nature, and the adjective form of nature is natural. So this is why being able to build words from stem words is such an important skill. Such farming, continuing in the text, such farming methods, however, were not able to supply the rapidly growing something of the world. Straightforward language structure here. Before the gap, we've got an adjective, growing. So we know from the example that adjectives have to modify nouns, but we don't have the noun. A growing what? We don't know. Before the adjective, we've got an adverb, which makes sense because adverbs modify adjectives. So rapidly, how is it growing? Well, it's growing rapidly, so rapidly growing. And before the adverb, we can see an article, the. Now, all articles need a noun of some kind, and here we would have to ask ourselves the what. And of course, we don't know. So there's two clues here telling us that we need a noun of some kind. The and growing, both of them require a noun. So populate is our verb. What's the noun form of populate? Population, which is why the answer is, if you can see over my head, you can see that the answer is population. Rapidly growing population of the world and the increasing demands on food. What type of word do we need here? In this case, although food is a noun, in this case it's acting as an adjective of some kind. So food what? What is it that food is trying to modify? Consume is our verb. Of course, if food is going to be an adjective in this case, then that means that we're looking for a noun of some kind. So the noun of consume is consumption. So increasing demands on food consumption. Now it's a little bit tricky here because there should be a full stop there, because sometimes punctuation can give you a clue, but there's not a full stop here in the text. In order to cope with this rising demand, factory farming methods were introduced along with the something. So we've got an article. What's the noun? What article does what noun does the article belong to? We don't know. There's no adjectives in the way, there's no adverbs in the way. Here it's clear that we need a noun of some kind, the what. And develop is our verb, development is our noun. Now, another key, a little clue to get the correct type of word, and we've seen this twice now. This is the second time that we've seen it. And you can see after the gap, you've got of. And if we go back to question number 1, you can see after question number 1, you've also got of. And while this isn't a 100% rule, it's a very, very good clue that after the gap, if you've got of or a different preposition, chances are it's going to be a noun of some kind. So it's not a golden rule, it's not a 100% certainty, but it is a nice little clue just to bear in mind. Now for question number 4, along with the development of genetically engineered something hormones. Now, we've got our noun after the gap, which is hormones. So if it's a gap before a noun, chances are it's going to be an adjective of some kind. And that certainly fits the pattern because we've got genetically, which is an adverb, engineered, which is an adjective. And so in the simple language pattern, we've got adverb, adjective, adjective, noun. So here we need our or do we? Do we need a noun? We need a noun, but this noun acts as an adjective, and this is a little bit tricky, unfortunately, because sometimes you can have nouns which, in fact, lots and lots of nouns can be used as adjectives, and we've seen this for question number 2, where before consumption we've got a noun which is acting as an adjective. So it's a little tricky thing that you've got to look out for. So for question number 4, we need a noun. The noun needs to act as an adjective, and of course the noun is, or the adjective in this case, is growth. Now, if you're not familiar with this, and very often this is a word that, and growth is a word that comes up on word formation exercises quite a lot. So if you're not familiar with that word as a noun, or in this case being used as an adjective, then please write that down, store it in your mental bank somewhere, because it is a word that will come up in word formation exercises quite a lot. What's going on here? I think for produce. I think produce is for production, but let's just skip over that, which resulted in a massive increase in food production. However, these developments in the use of factory farming and drug have led to a widespread feeling ... So we've got let's have a look at the words around the gap. We've got a gap, and before the gap we've got drug. Now, drug is a noun, but if you've got a noun and you've got a gap afterwards, what might this be? Well, we've seen this twice already. We've seen it with question number 4, and we've seen it with question number 2. Here, drug, although it's a noun, it's being used as an adjective, which means that number 5 has to be a noun as well. Now, we've got 2 possible answers that we can have for number 5. We can either say treatment. We can use the singular form to talk about this in a general way, or we can say treatments if we want to highlight the plural nature of this and say that there are many, many different types of treatment. Both in this context, because of the language structure that we're presented with, both of them are absolutely fine. So drug treatment or drug treatments have led to a widespread feeling that animals are being caused a lot of distress and that the quality of the food itself suffers as a consequence. Certainly, many people something with the idea of keeping animals. Now, earlier on I said if you've got of after a gap, chances are, or I did say of and the other prepositions, I did say chances are it's going to be a noun, but I also said that this isn't a general rule, and we can see that here because in this case a noun isn't going to help us. Certainly many people agreement with the idea of keeping animals. It doesn't fit. So what we need here is a verb, but the stem word is a verb, and we can't use the stem word in the answer. So what do we do now? Well, what we've got to do here is think about the context of what this whole sentence is trying to say. And if we read on, what the context tells us is that people don't agree. It's that they not that they agree, it's that they don't agree. Now, we've got to think of one word that fits in our gap. We can't use 2 words to fit in a gap. So our answer in this case, the negative form of the verb, is disagree. Certainly many people disagree with the idea of keeping animals in one building for their entire what? Entire is an adjective. Adjectives modify nouns. So the noun form of the stem word is existence. Of keeping animals in one building for their entire existence, and argue that more emphasis should be given to what? Well, let's have a look at the language around the gap. We've got farming afterwards, we've got methods, so we've got an adjective noun collocation there. So clearly the message would be, if we take out the adjective, it would be that more emphasis should be given to some kind of methods. And we know that it's farming methods, but we also need another modifier here. We need another adjective here which modifies the noun. So not just farming methods, but alternative. So alternative farming methods. Now, you probably remember earlier on in the after question number 1, we've got a situation here where it says the rapidly growing population, and here the language pattern was article, adverb, adjective, noun. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that's pretty much what we've got here, really. I mean, we haven't got the article, but we have got a noun, we have got an adjective. Why is this not an adverb? Well, let's put the adverb in and argue that more emphasis should be given to alternatively farming methods. Well, that doesn't fit. The language pattern doesn't work. So that's something we have to watch out for. The language patterns are not always simple language patterns, but they can be. You can have a number of options in some cases. So, and for number 1 we had adverb, adjective, noun. For number 8 we've got adjective, adjective, noun. So this is why your knowledge of language patterns has got to be really tip top before you do the word formation exercise. Okay, now I know I went through that at a little bit of a fast tempo, and my apologies for that, but if you have any questions at all, or if you disagree with my explanations, or you want me to go into a little bit more depth, then please get in contact with me by leaving a comment below or on my Facebook page, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion with you to help you understand a little bit better, or to help clarify the points that I made. Thank you very much for watching today, and I'll be back later on this week with some CAE exam questions. So if you fancy a go at those, then I'll be putting out posts later on this week, so keep an eye out for them, and I'll hopefully see you soon.